Hello everybody, welcome back to another cake tutorial by your girl, Cake Plug. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I decorate my heart cakes from the very beginning, from stacking the cakes to filling, crumb coating, final coat, and fully decorating the cake. So first off, I do use Swiss meringue buttercream on all of my cakes. And a little trick that I do want to share with you guys is how you see me do right here. I am creating a dam of buttercream and I'm creating 2 layers of that dam. And before I add my filling, I'm going to place that in the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes until it gets nice and firm. So after the 10 to 15 minutes is up, I go ahead and grab my next layer of cake and place it on top. And by doing this freezing method, your fillings are not going to ooze out because the dam of buttercream is now nice and frozen. Now, another tip that I have is my cakes are refrigerated overnight and I don't decorate cakes with frozen cakes. And the reason why I don't is because that does cause cracking. So now that all of our cake layers are nice and stacked, I did move on to the crumb coat. And after I did my crumb coat layer, I placed it in the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes, took it out, did my final coat, froze it for 10 to 15 more minutes, and then I ended up cutting the edges with my drywall scraper. And I find this to be the best tool for cake decorating, so I highly recommend this for sharp edges. Now for the final coat, I do like to go over it several times until I am pleased with the final result. But if you're finding that your frosting is getting a little soft on you, don't worry about it. Just place it back in the freezer for 10 more minutes and then get back to scraping. Next, I'm going to move on to my shell borders. And if you're actually new at cake decorating, I would highly recommend that you practice on the side before you do the real deal on the cake. The way I like to explain this part is you have full control of the piping bag. And for hand placement, I have my right hand at the very top of the bag. Also, my bag is not filled up way too much to where it starts oozing out of the bag and I lose control. And like you just noticed right here, I did have an air bubble that came out while I was piping. Don't worry, it happens to the best of us. But in that case, it's so easy. Just grab a little mini spatula, clean that up, and then begin your following piping. Now moving on to the fun part, which is decorating the rest of the cake. And right here I'm going in with my large leaf tip. For this part I am eyeballing it, but if you have a hard time, I would recommend you get circle cutters, kind of stamp it on there and then let that guide you. Now moving on to the drawstrings. I do like to practice behind the spatula before I do it on the cake. And you guys, to be real with you, I still struggle with this to this day. But if I can share any tips with you is I like to be nice, steady, and still. And I do like to take my left hand under my right palm. That way I can add support to my right hand that is holding the piping bag and I can be a little less shaky. And if you still struggle with drop strings like how I did for a long time, just practice on a little piece of parchment paper until you finally get it down. Next, I'm going to go in with my star tip and I'm going to add this in the middle of where we just used our leaf tip. And that's just going to make the design pop a little bit more. I like to overlap the buttercream on top of other piping work. I think it gives it more depth and it makes it look super detailed. Now using the same star tip, I'm gonna do this shell border on the top and bottom borders. Now here I'm going to go in with a very tiny star tip and I'm going to create the reverse L method, which is basically creating a rosette and elongating the tail, and whichever way you started your last rosette, you're going to do the opposite motion and then repeat that. Now for the final touches, I'm going to go in with these little rosettes to kind of mimic flowers, which is still the same tip that we used for the white shell border and the reverse L method for the bottom border. And I just grabbed some of the pink leftover buttercream that I had and I darkened the shade a little bit. That way it could be a different shade of pink and not blend in with the other pink shade that we have. And then I finished it off with adding some leaves to the rosettes. Final step is adding all of my edible pearls, and I do purchase these from Amazon, which I will have a link down below in the description if you're interested. And I'm going with 2 different sizes. I'm going with a medium size on my shell borders And then on the inside of the heart by the message, I'm going with smaller edible pearls. And an easy way to add these edible pearls instead of using your fingers is I like to use eyebrow tweezers. These are obviously brand new and only specifically for my cake decorating. So I know I said that was the last step, but knowing me, I was just staring at the cake and I really enjoyed that darker shade of pink that we added. So I decided to go in with the small star tip and go ahead and add an extra piping border of that. And then of course here I decided to add some smaller rosettes on the cake board and finished it off with the leaves. And now that completes our heart cake tutorial. I hope that you guys were able to learn a lot of tips and tricks from me. Leave me on the comments if you have any other questions that I didn't get to. And thank you guys for watching. Please give this video a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, you guys.